Good evening, dear moderators. Good evening, dear community. Hello, everyone. Let's start our energy quarter. And, as I promised, in this spectacular broadcast, we will have Viktor Kurtiev, who will tell us about the imbalances in energy production in the form of a sharp energy political thriller about who is behind these imbalances and essentially what to do about it. And I'll start with a question that concerns many in the energy sector, not just energy professionals. Kurtiev, please tell me, why did you fire Kubrakov? Me? Yes. Why did you strike down a holy man? As already written in American publications, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not to blame precisely. He left on his own. Or do you want to accuse me of driving him to leave? I can't understand. Well, how else? The person fought for this position for a long time, a lucrative, wonderful position that interests everyone. The anti-corruption officials say everything is fine, everything is under control, everything is excellent. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, someone just up and leaves without any warning. Well, let us go a bit more chronologically. The last broadcast with you was definitely on the April 16th. And after that, as is often the case in such situations, there was a lot of noise and chatter for several days. People were busy talking about it, sharing their thoughts and opinions, and discussing what had happened in various circles. And I have also received detailed feedback, so to speak, from the Kubrakov group, Nayem, and the whole gang. And I must say it has been quite enlightening and informative. However, the guys felt extremely confident about the situation. They mentioned that all the concerns were just nonsense and that they were stronger and more united than ever before. The Washington Regional Committee definitely supports us, and indeed everything will be fine for us. But Kurtiev is lying. They had their first cold shower. April 26 in the year 2023, on Friday, which was Government Day, it was a significant event in the Verkhovna Rada, where surprisingly a well-prepared parliamentary body tore Kubrakov to pieces. With all the numerous complaints and grievances about bridges that are falling apart, roads that lead to nowhere, inefficient toll booths, endangered turtles, unresolved energy issues, and so on, it is clear that there are many problems to address. Because it was the end of April, in the month of April, there were several different waves of strikes on the energy sector. They extinguished it completely well, but everything burned down, as they often say. That's why he was completely torn apart. He was torn apart so badly and in such a brutal manner that even the old-timers of the Verkhovna Rada, who have seen many things in their time, don't remember a precedent like this. It was an unprecedented event where no final video of the Government Day session was released, leaving everyone in shock and disbelief. Usually, how does it happen? It's no secret, it's a public discussion, so this video wasn't there. It was just so, well, really extremely, incredibly, absolutely, undeniably awful. This is an absolute precedent. Well, on May 8th, it hit again with a significant impact and widespread consequences. And on the 9th, Kubrakov was removed from his official position, because they needed to channel the energy and outrage of the people in a more structured and effective manner. And that's how it was done. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, and this is indeed the peak of the iceberg. Yes, indeed, there is definitely a component that still raises the question about Nayem. Why was Kubrakov taken down while Nayem definitely still remained when they were both still involved in this concrete story together? Whether he did or didn't, Kubrakov is quite a decent person in life and in the world, and has often shown his commitment to integrity and kindness, both in his personal and professional life. Unfortunately, indeed his fault lies in fact that he drew considerable attention to this particular matter due to his name and presence. Equivalent to Reznikov and eggs at 17, that is, he did not participate directly involved. But he couldn't have not understood at all. He was indeed the minister at that specific time. So, he is definitely to blame. He bears full responsibility without a doubt. If you can't understand what's happening underneath your position, then write a resignation letter if you disagree, in any way, shape, or form. Step into the public sphere, take a stand, say, I disagree, these decisions were wrong, but you just sat there, you accepted it. There, let's say, globally in various countries and regions, this team's song is sung throughout the world with great respect and admiration. Today, Kubrakov's deputy, Comrade Yevko, officially submitted a resignation letter in a formal manner. I think he will be dismissed next week. Next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, there will be a meeting of the audit chamber. Wednesday, with a thorough, comprehensive, detailed, and extensive report on the expenditures of the Restoration Agency, this will indeed be a significant breakthrough. Yevko is leaving on the eve of this important report. Well, and recently there was this extremely unpleasant incident with a law firm, a lawyer with a $200,000 bribe, and so on. With his brother, yes. This is another kind of track, reputational. I am absolutely sure that they won't get out of it anytime soon. So this whole saga, as I had indeed predicted, will truly end in an epic fail. There you go. Both Nayem's booths, known for their unique and creative designs, and Nayem's turtles, adored for their charming nature, will undoubtedly become a meme and a household name, remembered and cherished by many for years to come. And we have specific locations in these fortifications, strategically and carefully placed under the station, where it was planned to transport them. We'll most likely use it as storage or something else, because it's one big sort of epic fail, and it's ending predictably. Definitely, sort of. And even in this corruption story, they couldn't actually bring it to a final conclusion. Basically, they couldn't essentially bring it to a conclusion. Because as of today, the deadlines for that entire array of various fortifications have been repeatedly postponed and delayed. You remember, as you know, in my terminology, these were basically objects of two types: conditional booths, unconditional turtles. Booths are small fortifications over transformers. Turtles are the big ones standing nearby for a complete move under the stations. So they didn't even finish this entire story. The first phase of construction, the second-level fortifications, so-called booths in our terminology, has been postponed multiple times. Initially, it was supposed to be ready by the end of last year. Then it was postponed to the end of the first quarter. Now the deadline is July 1st. I have thoroughly checked the current readiness statistics. Unfortunately, only a third of the booths will actually be ready by the end of June. The rest will be postponed again. And the construction of all the projects is just kind of halted. Some are at the foundation pit stage, others at the pile field stage. Well, the turtle facility near the Kyiv substation is in a high state of readiness. However, the work there has also essentially been halted as of today. So it's essentially one colossal epic fail with the money that was spent, wasted, mismanaged, and even partially stolen, leading to a significant loss and disappointment for everyone involved. It all ended somewhat predictably, as expected. Tell me, why was he dismissed in your understanding? Why did the authorities decide to dismiss Kubrakov? Because Kubrakov was at one time a favorite, almost a favorite of Zelensky, he was even predicted to become the prime minister. It wasn't just a prediction, he had an agreement with the Americans and our authorities. Kubrakov was and remains a favorite of the Americans, he still is. Igrokov was and remains indeed a favorite of the Americans, he remains. There is another underlying reason that needs to be considered. It's a story that teeters on the edge of being a foul, and this aspect is crucial to understand the full context of the situation. A disclaimer is needed for better clarity and understanding. Therefore, I will use the terminology rumor has it. Kubrakov has a grievance. According to my information, the decision to dismiss him was made in the president's office back in February. The main reason for this particular story was that he was indeed practically walking into the office for very important meetings with an array of microphones stuck all over him. And they were FBI microphones. He recorded everyone indiscriminately without any hesitation, whoever he could possibly catch. And this is the underlying reason why. They delayed this dismissal a bit because of the US Congress vote, then aid, then something else, and the opposition from the Americans. In fact, the story with the fortifications and the destroyed energy sector became more of an excuse than the root cause. The root cause in our kingdom of crooked mirrors is usually different, often by considering various factors that are often overlooked and require careful analysis. Considering all the intricate details and nuances of the various concepts involved, it is clear that this is incorrect. We are, after all, a nation currently engaged in a state of war. If you come to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief and record him, then it's either Article 111 of the Criminal Code or Article 114. State exchange or espionage involves complex interactions between nations. Both are tough. It depends on the origin of your passport and how many passports you have. It's a very, very bad situation. If you don't agree, leave. And in any case, even if you are morally right, in a country at war, you can't do such things, in my opinion. Well, even if it's in favor of partners and allies in the United States and in the States, it's the same. Absolutely. At first, in the beginning, ours, it is absolutely crucial to understand that it does not necessarily benefit the enemy state, but rather a third party, a strange state. And look, there's another important point here. It's related to the position of these so-called anti-corruption activists when they eagerly write, yes, it's very funny. It's incredibly amusing. It's just so blatantly obvious and utterly outrageous. When Kubrakov was dismissed from his position, many individuals who are often referred to as opinion leaders and who are supposedly anti-corruption activists, in quotes, hurriedly this entire group of Ukrainian anti-corruption advocates, rushed to his defense. These so-called activists, who claimed to fight against corruption, were quick to stand up for him, creating a spectacle that was both ironic and telling of their true intentions. Was he truly such an exceptionally good manager that he ended up becoming a victim to all sorts of shady dealings, underhanded schemes, and manipulative plots orchestrated by the cunning Eurogolic? It's he were a 3-year-old child and didn't understand what he was doing. Nikolaev writes conditionally with Anna Sorokaya conducted an audit. Nikolaev writes a conditional date, met the given deadline. Fortification structures, checked all the estimates, and I can tell you authoritatively that indeed everything is okay. They conducted estimates for 19 billion hryvnias. But who allowed this? I have a question, hold on. Well, the estimates, this is part of the project for the estimate documentation, and in general this topic is classified as for official use only. I'm curious, what about Nayem? Is she handing it out for review, Nikolai Vysorokin? He can definitely give it to me. It's very straightforward. After all, these projects, they have already gone through expert reviews. They have estimates with figures, indeed, absolutely. If the total for the Kyiv substation, which is a critical infrastructure, comes out and it has a total of 17 billion hryvnias without VAT, and with VAT included, it will be a significant amount. 20.4, and it contains 1.3 million cubic meters of concrete. No need for a lengthy audit. You need to divide this number by the cubes and get 15,000 per cube, hryvnias, and this is a little above the market. 3 times. And I don't know who conducted those audits. It's a simple story. This isn't microchips or Leighton's binomial. It's a very simple story. But the very fact that we are writing, we checked everything here, and overall it's quite, well, sketchy. When we talk about corruption in Energoatom, it's a big no-no, very bad. But corruption in the Restoration Agency is indeed a completely different matter. These are absolutely our guys, you know. Well, 15.5, well, they lost 10,000 along the way. This all smells really very bad indeed. Actually, indeed. Very bad. And unfortunately, the chain itself, it is incredibly, extremely bad. The organizers are like schemers, formally adhering to procedures. The formal approval of all projects and initiatives, for example, in the Ministry of Energy, for example. Well, our Minister of Energy, Holushchenko, who is a lawyer by profession and also a prominent KB comrade, doesn't sign this nonsense. He threw his deputy Svetlana Hrinchuk under the bus, leaving her to deal with the consequences, and now she has to face the repercussions of this decision, which, following this template where only the name of the KB substation changes, churned out these approvals. At the initial stage, for example, the General Staff meticulously churned out these approvals. Subsequently, when it was time to submit the projects, the guys from the General Staff said, wait, there are quite a few specifics there. How was it before? These are different sites, slightly different geology, slightly different foundations, pile fields, but basically it's our construction, right? Well, here is the standard project. We are approving it. Go ahead and work on it. But closer to the deadline, no, wait, this is an individual case. We want to talk to each contractor separately, I say, in the general staff.
We will address each topic separately and then come together to discuss them in detail, ensuring that
A bad story that was really bad. A very foul-smelling and extremely unpleasant story indeed. And everyone who touched this, all of this will stay with them forever, because it will end in an epic fail and future very serious criminal investigations, because money leaves a trace, decisions leave a trace, the result is on the scoreboard, minus 9,000 megawatts, and the money spent on nothing and nowhere, and there is a price for managerial decisions. It's not necessarily just about stealing on concrete. You can build the wrong thing in the wrong place. There's also the significant cost of this entire situation. It's not like you stole from the club, which would have been a different issue altogether. 100% of the money spent is a total loss if it didn't protect anything valuable or important. If lives were lost because of this tragic and preventable event, if lives could have been protected and they lost their arms and legs due to the lack of proper measures, if specific soldiers who were bravely fighting on the front lines did not receive some essential weapons, adequate protection, or the same concrete fortifications that could have been used to save them, and all together. Friends, this is not just hands up to the elbows in blood, this is up to the neck in blood, a situation so dire and severe that it demands our utmost attention and immediate action to prevent such tragedies in the future. This concrete is indeed stained with blood. It's truly no different from the uproarious commotion and upheaval in the past about the pig farmers. Remember back in the day when Poroshenko was being removed, all these people were shouting about the Swinovchuks and the massive widespread corruption surrounding Poroshenko. Indeed. So this led the country to a weakened state and did not allow it to use 5 years to prepare for war. This corruption similarly prevented preparation for the war. But the most frightening thing is that in the conditions of war, it manifests itself even more as a killer. Because these are all indeed killers of people and individuals. A large number of individuals who have actually suffered, are really suffering, and will suffer because we lost time and resources on the wrong, more important priorities. I'll tell you 2 little stories providing 2 insightful remarks that will help clarify and elaborate on what was discussed earlier. These stories will emphasize what was said above. Apparently, despite the memorandums with NABU and the bravado of the anti-corruption community, as I understand it, in recent months, Mustafa Nayem has been constantly written about by more than one of our law enforcement agencies, and documented all his activities meticulously and in great detail. After that broadcast, which aired on April 1, I started hearing echoes and whispers that it was quite significant and impactful. Let's put it this way, the engineering ecosystem is quite a niche field. Even though the documents are sort of DSK, the expertise is handled here. These designers know each other and people communicate with one another. We are deeply integrated into this business. It's impossible to hide anything here. You understand what's going on. Even without having copies of all the necessary and relevant documents and important details, you understand how it happens. And the same thing happens in law enforcement agencies, where everyone actually communicates with each other in various ways and through different channels. So, I had a specific case that involved some of my close associates, who, as I understand, were meticulously and thoroughly documenting Nayem's various activities and movements. Well, they told me a few more episodes, specifically this particular documentation of his, which really concerned me a lot. Here's how he reacted to me, how he perceived me in general. Well, first of all, until Kubrakov was actually dismissed, he didn't even know my exact name. There was an Anatoly Kurtiev, or rather in Zaporizhia, it's Maya. I'm like Viktor here, Anatoly. He even mixed up names on several occasions, which was quite surprising. And when he tries to communicate with others, it becomes evident that there is a significant lack of understanding. I was genuinely struck by the depth of his misunderstanding, as if his head is filled with sawdust. For instance, during a conversation, he might confuse simple concepts or misinterpret basic instructions, leading to further confusion and miscommunication. He's truly demonstrating it honestly and genuinely. He really believes in it, wholeheartedly. The scariest part is that he indeed believes it. Right over here, there's a booth valued at approximately 150 million hryvnias. Here it costs approximately 250, and here it costs 450 for the same type of auto-transformer. And this turns out to be our logistical shoulder. You understand, here we are transporting sand for 100 kilometers, and here for 200. Even in such moments in the world, he just doesn't really feel the difference at all. Absolutely. Because the truth is that the actual price of the cube brought to the final contractor, the final executor in this scheme, is 3,200, 3,700 hryvnias. And these 500 hryvnias, that's the logistical leverage, but definitely not 150 and 450 million. And he really believes in it. So he definitely, I just used to think a little bit more differently, you know, in a different way. And then, you know, it seemed to me that he really doesn't truly understand the scale of the mess he's gotten himself into, and for which he will indeed absolutely have to answer. The second story, to be continued. I have a very good mutual friend with Kubrakov, who is a real person. This friend and I have known each other for many years, sharing many common interests. He is indeed a very, very good friend of his. We have really, really known each other for many, many years, 20 years. He truly, truly wishes him well. And he is constantly and hesitatingly friendly banter with me. When I initially started my scientific bioresearch on concrete blood, he says, yes, Viktor, indeed, of course, you actually have the entitlement to this role. You are using public information, obvious conclusions, and so on. Yeah, in fact, indeed, actually. So a few weeks ago, we had a discussion with him. I was explaining to him why these turtles, well, again, let me remind you, there are two types of fortifications. These big, supposedly turtles, which cost 20 billion, 15, 20 billion each, right? Why do they absolutely, completely, and utterly make no logical sense at all, and have no chance of ever being launched? I was explaining to him the basics of design, how a substation is actually designed. You need to remind them of your connection to this, so the viewers understand that you're not just some expert, but that you have an engineering company that has been doing design work for how many years now? 20 years in the market. There is a specific technology that is designed and developed for the purpose of creating and designing such unique and specific objects. You are not actually designing a shed or a roof. In fact, it is supposed to become a substation in the near future. You start with a single line diagram. You essentially need to place the equipment, and you also need to understand the dimensions of this equipment. You need to understand where the engineering floors are, how the cable channels work, and how the 100,000 wires will connect the 750 kV and 330 kV circuits together. You have to understand that indeed only a few companies in the world, such as, for example, actually produce 750 kilovolt switchgear. For example, Siemens and a few Chinese companies, such as various corporations. At Siemens, there's a queue for designing bots, such an aggregation. Then, approximately a duration of 1 year for design, then about a duration of 1 year for manufacturing and delivery, then the implementation and execution of the work, and then here is the operational substation, which has several 750 kV and several 330 kV lines, and right next to it this monstrosity has been built. And you need to create a comprehensive repair scheme for each and every overhaul of every single line in the operating energy facility, and you have to do this switching, and it's not just one summer. It's not just one summer. This is the year 2030 if everything is done correctly and with technology, but if done like they do, then it will never happen. So I'm kind of explaining all this to this person who actually has a very good opinion of Kubrakov. Actually, he says, can we just please take a 10-minute break? My nose started bleeding. I ask why. He says, my blood pressure went up.
My nose started bleeding. He says, don't they understand that? I say no. They don't understand what they've done.
In the end, ultimately, well, we will have to answer this important and significant question. So, the whole country is now experiencing the consequences of a reckless energy policy that ignored common sense, logic, and even the basic instinct of self-preservation, causing significant issues and affecting daily lives and the future of our nation. And after all these significant blows to maneuverable energy, how much did we lose? Approximately 9,000 megawatts in total, overall. Well, with each wave of strikes, it's like, a hit, and we manage to get something up and running pretty quickly. So a hit, a shutdown, we bring it back online, and then what isn't badly damaged. There were many times when a few stations went down to zero. Within 2 or 3 days, we brought several blocks back up. Well, the cumulative balance is around 9,000 megawatts. Our energy system is currently severely deficient. Throughout the entire time range, which spans several days, we observed consistent patterns. Our western section is currently fully loaded. We have approximately 1,700 megawatts of commercial imports in total and overall. We still have 250 megawatts of agreed emergency assistance beyond the limit. Sometimes we overdo it. There was even a case when our net power flow was 2,400 megawatts. But this is a violation of our parallel operation conditions with Europe. This is definitely wrong. Therefore, we mostly adhere to all these criteria. Well, despite this ongoing situation, we are experiencing significant shortages, and the entire population of Ukraine has fully felt the impact of these shortages in their daily lives. Friends, please like this broadcast. We need to push it everywhere and spread it as much as possible, and support us. The QR code that appeared is the QR code for my Telegram channel. I will now use this technology to definitely get more subscribers, and there are also a lot of interesting things appearing there. And so, in connection with this particular issue, the question naturally arises, well, actually, have we already reached the absolute limit of what can be considered sustainable, or are we still not quite there yet in terms of achieving full sustainability? Have we passed the point of no return where, so to speak, indeed, in fact, the energy system starts to completely collapse? No, you absolutely can't say that definitively. You can't say that. The energy system maintains its integrity and will continue to do so. The strikes from 2002-2023, lasting for a period of approximately 21 years, spanning roughly from September 22 to March 23, the Russian strikes on the energy system followed a single algorithm in a systematic and methodical manner. Back then, their goal was to completely and utterly shut us down, destroy the entire and complete integrity of the system, and achieve a blackout. A major systemic failure. They followed this algorithm. They built up their strategic missile reserve. They failed to extinguish us. We met many times on the air back then. I talked about this in great detail. We implemented for the very first time ever in history an innovative approach called preemptive load shedding. That is precisely why they understood everything completely and thoroughly. And this year, specifically in 2023, without overcomplicating things, they started targeting only the generating capacity of power plants and energy facilities, with highly concentrated and precise strikes. When you have 10 rockets flying at one point at the same time, it's incredibly hard to handle. That's why the system will maintain its integrity. But we will have a severe balance deficit, and there will be outages, meaning there will definitely be outage schedules. And depending on the exact deficit of this particular balance, it will significantly affect the precise ratio of time when there is light and when there isn't. Exactly. So right now we have, well, this week, for example, was definitely especially tough, for instance, for Kyiv or maybe for some place like Odessa. This has several reasons, because throughout the month of May and these first 7 days of June, the schedules across the country were uneven. During the course of events, there were undoubtedly certain excesses and abuses that took place which cannot be overlooked or ignored. Let's discuss these outages in more detail. What exactly are they and what causes them? Well, the gist of it is that, for example, in May, at the end of April, the distribution system operators, DSOs so-called, well, in parentheses, Oblenergo, when they provided the planned consumption for May, some cunning DSOs inflated these plans. And then, when algorithms were applied throughout May, where they cut off from inflated plans, there were practically no outages in Ternopil or Chernihiv regions. And some place like Kiev had 35% outages, while the average weighted value would be 22%. Such imbalances existed. A fair average weighted value would be, for example, 25. Plus, these strikes coincided with the maintenance campaign of the nuclear units. Today, just an hour and a half ago, one of the units came out of maintenance. Now, in the next 2 weeks, it will be a bit easier. Additionally, starting tomorrow, which is June 8th, the company Ukrenergo will be implementing a new strategy regarding the outage schedules. This change in approach aims to improve the efficiency and reliability of the power supply system. In other words, instead of limits imposed on distribution system operators, there will be hourly shutdown schedules imposed on the system operators themselves. The system of shutdowns will be balanced and fairly just, ensuring that no one is unfairly affected. These schedules will be organized into 6 distinct queues, each designed to manage the process efficiently and equitably. On weekends, the load is usually lower, so tomorrow only one of the 6 queues will be introduced. And starting Monday, 2 out of 6 shifts, and I think that's definitely enough in such a gentle mode. We'll get through the next 2 weeks. And in the 20s of June, approximately in the month of June, another nuclear unit will be taken out for scheduled maintenance. It will definitely be a little bit more challenging there. That is, some July will be the most incredibly challenging in terms of balance and overall stability and equilibrium, when most of the remaining capacity, which is essential for our operations, comes online in August. September, October will be, let's say, quite manageable and will significantly improve our efficiency. And then everything depends, after the start of the heating season, on the temperature regime, other various factors, the dynamics of lost power, the dynamics of repairs, and the commissioning of what indeed can probably be put into operation, and so on and so forth. It's a dynamic situation. It all ultimately depends on our agility. Look, there's a question from a viewer here, but that's if the Russians don't keep hitting. If they do, can they knock out the nuclear power plants by hitting their infrastructure right now, at this very moment? Well, what I mean by that is they are hitting the transformers that are located around them, causing damage and disruption to the electrical systems. Well, look, the station's node is actually part of the nuclear power plant. Hitting the station's node is essentially hitting the NPP. This is, generally speaking, a disaster. Undoubtedly, it will be very painful for us, but I think this is already beyond the pale even for them. They won't go for it. Back in 1922, when they were suppressing us, around the South Ukrainian Khmelnytskyi and Romny nuclear power plants, they have a comprehensive design scheme for efficient power output, and they were hitting the adjacent substations in the region of. So basically, they didn't touch the nuclear power plant itself or its adjacent facilities, but they were hitting the outgoing lines to the perimeter, roughly speaking. And the automation completely shut down our nuclear units due to technical failures, and many times many units unexpectedly dropped to zero. At that very moment they dropped to zero, then they were raised from zero, and so on and so on. That's how we worked, as if they were completely clueless. But this is war. It's a matter of life and death now. It indeed depends on many factors. Attempts to force us into negotiations and so on in any possible way. This is just one of the fronts. There is a front, literally a front somewhere on the side. They decided to do this on the energy front because it strengthens their negotiating positions. I have already written about this, that essentially Putin will use the energy issue before winter. When BMW is mentioned, I think that in the fall season we will likely see various attempts to enter this complex negotiation track. Putin will simply play it out by accessing Russia's sophisticated analytical system to tell the West, look, the Ukrainians are going to freeze now, and we are ready to sink us back into the fold. This strategy is aimed at leveraging the situation to Russia's advantage, making it clear that they are prepared to negotiate on their terms. Yes, indeed, to synchronize us back, and this will be a form of very powerful and significant influence on, well, let's say a truce has been established, but he can cut it off at any moment. But at the same time, they will ask, why exactly are you going to build this distributed, decentralized energy exactly there? It's expensive, and it will be even more expensive if we have this cheap electricity. And someone will get caught in the schemes again. Look. with Russia. Everything is absolutely clear, but indeed everything is clear with them. They are enemies. We don't really understand why we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. We're even shooting off our own fingers, on our hands, on our feet. We're shooting our own knees. You see, as you might know, this energy absurdity actually started long before February 24th, 2022. In fact, it had already begun. In the year 1921, the preparation for the 1921-1922 heating season was completely and utterly botched. By the way, we also had an on-air point. Completely failed. We talked about this in August. At the very beginning of August, I wrote an article on Ukrainian Pravda, where I have a blog titled No Movie Electricity is Out, where I demonstrated, even simply by analyzing the dynamics and the port throughput, that even if we now have the money and start stockpiling coal or injecting gas and so on, we are already too late. This is indeed an absolutely very, very critical issue. I strongly believe that. And it became mainstream in November 2021. Back then, everyone in the studios shouted. The whole country in December 2021 was counting the ships that DTEK was bringing in with coal, that DTEK was supposedly bringing into our ports, and so on and so forth. Everyone forgot about it, which was quite surprising given the circumstances. We were just very lucky that December 2021 and the first half of January were very warm, which was unusual for that time of year and quite unexpected. And this bifurcation point, where all the energy supply curves that were supposed to, well, collapse conditionally in the first half of February, shifted somewhere to the first half of March, which was unexpected and caught many people off guard. And when the annexation and invasion began in 1924, energy consumption fell dramatically by half, significantly. The country is in collapse, a logistical collapse, an industrial collapse. People didn't show up for work, and everything remained in the shadow of this downfall. Putin should have postponed the intervention by a month. We would have drowned in the consequences of our decisions in the energy market ourselves. And all the crooks are indeed in place, ready to act, everyone who came to this event. And during this time, we had various different types of materials, including broadcasts and so on. The story of the days of betrayal in 10 parts, where I detailed how we handed over our nuclear power plants. Just chronologically, who called whom at what time, what commands were given, and so on, precisely and in every detail. How we synchronized the experiment on isolated work, in detail and thoroughly and comprehensively, completely. On February 23rd, exactly on that day, we went into isolation mode, and then precisely 4 hours later, the intervention began. It's a coincidence, that's all. But these are simple things. Simple things. We were led to this. We were led to the slaughter. They were led to the slaughter by internal agents. And then they urgently connected to the Western energy system. Yes. They saved us, of course, without any procedures. March 16th, in 2.5 weeks, definitely. Without any experiments or trials. Yes, indeed, this is very, very important. And yet another question that worries many people is about turning all of this off completely. We set up solar and wind energy, 11 gigawatts before the large-scale operation. We lost something. By the way, 11 and 12 gigs before the large-scale one. What is it? What was recently less was 8 kopecks. Well, something was lost there. In the occupied territory, 2-3 winds remain. Yes, indeed, we lost a lot of wind, but the gigawatts significantly continued to remain, and the sun, however, continued to stay on our side. And basically, it makes sense that when it's this hot, we should be getting energy from the sun. But for some reason, we are not getting it at this point in time. But our daytime deficit is significantly less than at night. We also have a bustling market. In Europe, on July 1st, 2019, we adopted the European market model, with some exceptions concerning the population, which is partially subsidized through the PSO for the population, and the old green energy producers, because the new green energy producers already operate according to the market. The old green energy producers, right? We have a price drop in the daytime zone, the day-ahead market, for example, and so on. In other words, it's a complex mechanism. And more questions arise. Why do we have outages during the nighttime? Our consumption is continually dropping significantly, and more frequently. We have a large deficit. We don't even have that nuclear base. It's partially under repair. Nuclear power currently carries a little over 4,000 megawatts of energy. And for example, the limits of Ukridro, which also suffered greatly along the Dnipro cascade, are significant and have had a considerable impact on the region. There is a daily water activation limit. It gets triggered during the evening peaks. Consequently, there is no generation at night either. In other words, we are in deficit 24 hours a day. We are in deficit 24 hours a day. The Western interface is overloaded. But this import must be commercially attractive to ensure its viability and success in the market. For this purpose, a few weeks ago, our regulator, who oversees market activities and ensures fair practices, raised the so-called price corridors in the market to better align with current economic conditions and market demands. In order to make this import commercially attractive, so that it gets transported, so that traders transport it. So there's absolutely nothing subversive here. All the conspiracy theories about Odessa being completely and utterly cut off, and somewhere in that little program, I forgot what it's called, where they monitor the instant flow on the line, that we're exporting somewhere, and here the tiger isn't getting enough meat at the zoo. It's all absolute, utter nonsense. Entirely, utterly extra. There's nothing scandalous here. We have a very difficult and challenging situation. We have huge and unprecedented deficits, and we need to clearly explain the complex situation. In the actions of the system operator Nekukrenergo globally, he simply cannot act otherwise. And he employs methods such as disconnection and demand management, which, so to speak, serve as the final step in the intricate process of regulating and maintaining the stability of the entire system. And in this reality, we will live for the next few years. This is a direct consequence of our policy. And I started with the idea that everything is clear with the Russians, but it's unclear with us. It's unclear with us. If we had acted differently, yes, we just 1 or 2 quarters before some milestone, well, not in this studio, but in the neighboring one, we constantly talked about it, that it would be like this, they would hit here, and we need to do this. With careful consideration and anticipation of possible outcomes and potential scenarios, we knew the implications and the potential consequences of our actions. Set up the headquarters here, keep the spare parts for this equipment here, do this here, do that here. We've talked about all this. It's not rocket science. Tell me, in these conditions, I mean, look, do I understand correctly that solar panels work? That this situation, which the energy experts told me about, that when the electricity is cut off, the solar panels also often shut down, because without this, if the station has a so-called grid tie inverter, then for it to work, it needs the grid frequency, roughly speaking, of course. If it is configured incorrectly and a node to which a specific station is connected is simply disconnected, and it does not have this frequency, roughly speaking, the leading frequency of the system, then it does not work. And there are those, they don't make a big deal out of it, but there's that moment. Or some small rooftop ones, such as, for example, that is, if a household with a rooftop station and a grid-tied inverter is disconnected, it doesn't work without the system. For this purpose, you will need either a small, highly controllable battery or a hybrid inverter capable of operating in this specific mode. Alright, then here's a question. Don't forget to like the broadcast. 3,500 are watching and only 1,045 likes. We're definitely catching up on the ratio. And subscribe to the channel, so there's a QR code hanging in the chat. So, under these specific and unique conditions, what exactly does the significant tariff increase that was implemented on June 1st mean for us and its implications? Following this increase, our valiant ministry, represented by the much-suffering Deputy Grinchuk, managed to officially declare that, as you can understand, Ukraine is to blame. This declaration came after a series of complex events involving many stakeholders and intricate geopolitical dynamics over the past few months. The ministry's stance, voiced by Deputy Grinchuk, reflects a broader understanding of the underlying issues at play. Therefore, Pushkodin urgently requires more financial resources to support the renewal process. Without these funds, proceeding will be impossible. This situation is completely nonsensical. Simply raising the tariff without changing the algorithm for using the additionally collected funds, creating a targeted fund for specific purposes, for example, restoring what can be restored in a manner that is both efficient and effective, in order to ensure that the funds are utilized properly for the benefit of the community and the environment. There is no direct causal relationship. Raising the tariff by a significant margin without changing the algorithm in the existing energy market model. In the current scenario, when you have an energy market which includes various components and factors with its different segments, the economic entities and numerous economic entities that exist in this market. There is a system operator, Ukroenergo, which ensures dispatching and transmission through main networks. There are distribution system operators, regional energy companies that distribute through local networks. Generation of different types. There are so-called hubs. These are the enterprises through which subsidies, such as various forms of financial assistance and other forms of support to the population and so on, are provided. Therefore, the additional funds, along with the increase in the tariff to 4.44, will be utilized effectively to support the necessary projects and initiatives. 32 kopecks per hryvnia, it will allow to collect approximately an additional 50 billion funds by the end of the year. And these additional 50 billion, they will simply go through the system of these economic entities' relationships, helping to cover certain debt chains and reduce the burden on Ukroenergo and Energoatom. Hydropower and Energoatom. These two companies have been assigned the function of subsidizing the population, i.e., the need for subsidizing will simply decrease significantly from these two companies in the near future, gradually. And they will go through these payment chains, including various steps and intermediaries, and eventually return to Ukraine, ensuring the proper allocation and utilization of funds. This will be a certain financial recovery of the existing energy market in the current scenario and situation. However, it is important to note that this does not establish any direct causal relationship with the immediate and urgent need for the restoration of the destroyed structure. While adding a small amount of money for repairs or allocating a little bit of funding for Energoatom might seem helpful, it does not directly address the core issue at hand. For us, for fuel and their increased costs, well, yes, it will definitely, absolutely, and significantly, undoubtedly allow. Given the quality of management which is biased towards corruption, it is clear that allocating an additional 10, 15, or $20 billion would simply provide more avenues for them to embezzle funds.
That's all. Well, indeed, that's really a lot.
That's quite a significant amount. Consequently, Energoatom, the company, is expected to be one of the primary beneficiaries of this development. This is due to the reduction in the social burden currently faced by Energoatom. As a result, Energoatom can focus more on its core operations. This shift will enhance its overall efficiency and productivity. So he is indeed the Russian Federation. Here he is, a producer of electricity. There is a portion of energy that he sells on the market in a commercial manner. And there is an assigned function. This is a special obligation. Energy accounts for 85%. Ukrohydro energy accounts for 15%. But it's clear about Ukrohydro, it is significantly destroyed. It has lost, let's not say how many megawatts, a lot. It's clear that the company, with its current operational capacities and financial flow, cannot bear this significant and long-term financial burden. That's understandable. But what about nuclear? That's a more complex issue that requires thorough investigation. We need to dig deeper there, thoroughly. Logically, the increase in electricity prices will lead to higher profitability for the energy sector, because previously the energy sector was not allowed to reach higher prices. Let's say there is a situational one at the moment right now, for the next 2 to 2.5 months, while part of his block is under repair. Accordingly, they are not working, and therefore there is no financial flow. This will allow the atom to exist by inertia. As a result, by the end of the year, generally speaking, roughly speaking, nuclear energy is one of the beneficiaries of this PVS. And now look, they are trying to finish corporatization, there have been maneuvers, and in this regard, I have a logical question. This is a whole separate story. I'm just a participant in the race. What do you mean? Well, I was a participant in the race, but let's say I didn't make it to the next round. I couldn't advance further. There's a group of comrades who were conditionally disqualified in the competition for independent members of the Navsovet. I'm part of that group, all disqualified under specific terms. I'm one of them, so I have a separate case. I'm handling this case. This particular case will include an informational component as well as an informational legal aspect, among other related elements and considerations. To the esteemed comrades of the Derkachevskaya OPG, who are currently in this very moment taking full advantage of the unique situation where 43% of the company's valuable assets are located in occupied territory, and while the existing administrative resources and capabilities allow them to do so, are making concerted efforts to preserve their management structure by creating a strategic buffer in the form of the NAPI Council. This council is intended to serve as a protective measure, ensuring the continuity and stability of their operations during these challenging times, which has 5 members, 2 from the state and 3 independents, but these 3 independents, who are controlled by external influences and have limited autonomy, are controlled, right? So what is the point of corporatization? It's to create a cutoff in the form of a sort of supervisory board, which is essentially a governing body, following all the necessary procedures, just like in the best and most prestigious houses of London. The spending doesn't compile, it's kind of actually essentially and basically independent of the government, which might essentially change, or if the relevant minister changes, right? Okay, they will replace 2 members in the state, but the majority will remain. So are they mainly combining in Tagansk? When they started the very grand and very ambitious campaign to significantly boost gas production, they poured billions of dollars into it and ultimately ended up with nothing. Instead, they had the most exceptionally fair, the most democratic council, which supposedly controlled everything, but in reality was just a facade. I'm afraid that there will be a repetition. Viktor Vyazykovsky writes, Energoatom already owes significantly more than the additional money for 2 years. He will even return all the debts to me. The cost remains. No, there I look, Approximately 8 months ago, I probably did such a detailed and comprehensive analysis, a thorough financial analysis. And back then there was already a significant and substantial debt. It amounted to about 100 billion hryvnias in Ukrainian currency. Now it is considerably much more. So look, before the large-scale war, the state of the energy atoms was critical because, in fact, various expenses were covered at its expense, for example, for the same green energy. He had a significant margin of safety because when he had 15 units in his composition, which were crucial for his strategy and operations, well, before the unfortunate and hostile occupation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant by external forces, then the declared operating cost, look, these are blocks built except for 2 during the Soviet era, which have long since depreciated. The Energoatom tariff never included a decommissioning fund component. That is, when the time comes in 10, 15, 20, 25 years to decommission these units, it will be the Ukrainian state that pays for it, ultimately and inevitably. This tariff, however, does not include these essential components. So if we exclude everything with full depreciation and without the decommissioning fund, the operating cost they showed was 2 American cents. But if you dig deeper, really deep into the subject matter, if you take the time to understand the intricate details and specifics of the various fuel schemes and how they operate, schemes on various spare parts with a markup of 350, 800% at different times and in various situations and scenarios. Jvania, Martynenko, and Poroshenko, who served as the president of Ukraine, are notable figures. After his presidency, Poroshenko continued to be influential. Derkach is another significant individual. Additionally, various branches of the Rosatom crypto colony have been involved. If you look into all of this, considering all the factors, the real operational expenditure is actually just a few cents. The second center, which has been meticulously scheming and accumulating resources over the past 20 years, includes interest on interest, virtual debts to various layers, horns, hooves, and so on, and sells parts to Energoatom with a markup of 300 to 800%. These parts, which are essential for Energoatom's operations, are sold at exorbitant prices, making the center highly profitable. That's how it all is, essentially. In other words, the company's margin of safety was tremendously large, in essence, essentially. For 20 years, they systematically destroyed it, ensuring every part was completely obliterated beyond recognition. So considering all the factors and circumstances, what exactly should be done in this situation to address the issues effectively? We are heading quite obviously indeed towards a difficult winter. and we will undoubtedly have a not very easy summer at the very least. And actually, many people there are asking questions of a practical nature. For example, can the country build additional solar and wind power plants to partially cover the energy deficit? Or is it unprofitable if we consider that it's not for profit but for system stabilization purposes, such as, again, all these storages that were signed there as well. Look, a week ago, I posted about the opportunity and potential for growth within the energy sector, highlighting the promising signs of innovation and future advancements. As the wave approached, it picked him up with its force. He felt the water lift him off his feet. The experience was thrilling and frightening. I explained quite concisely and simply what needs to be done in a detailed manner in order to achieve the desired outcome. The idea is indeed very simple. We have a truly remarkable and absolutely extraordinary challenge, and to survive, we must give an incredibly and undeniably extraordinary response. The Energy Chance, abbreviated as CHANCE, stands for the Crisis Emergency Headquarters, a term derived from Ukrainian. This designation implies that in situations where there is a 30% deficit in the energy system, spanning across all price and time ranges, the market alone will not be able to resolve the issue. The current market model, along with its inherent characteristics and limitations, is not equipped to address such a significant shortfall. For instance, if the energy supply drops by 30%, affecting various sectors and time periods, the market, I suggested that military challenges require centralized administrative decisions to ensure effective and efficient responses. Therefore, I proposed the creation of a centralized headquarters to oversee and coordinate all necessary actions and strategies. Led by the Deputy Prime Minister, the new Minister of Energy, who will give us all a chance because the current one offers no chances. So this headquarters indeed has remarkably extraordinary powers, and in fact it is quite impressive. This is not necessarily direct intervention, so to speak, in the activities of economic entities, a significant part of which are indeed private, in fact. This is the coordination at the highest level of all the country's resources that are currently available and accessible. All repair resources, all construction resources, and all other necessary resources. So, with minimal bureaucracy, when you have, for example, two adjacent energy entities, such as two neighboring power plants or energy stations, this one got this, that one got that, this one needs this specific piece of hardware, and that one needs that particular piece of hardware, well, just swap them to ensure both entities have what they need. And within a month, debit, credit, signed, handed over, accepted. The decision must be made instantly. First, you put it in place, turn it on, and then you handle the paperwork. A headquarters with emergency powers is needed. Action, that is command, action, then formalization. Command, action, formalization. This is the energy of wartime, the economy of wartime. Only this way will we survive. And on a global scale, within the comprehensive framework of this central headquarters, there are a total of 6 crucial and essential key things that need to be accomplished and completed. The simplest and most effective way is to enter into negotiations with the Europeans in order to increase our external interface from 1700 megawatts to a higher capacity. We have differing assessments with the authorized specialists from Ukrenergo. They are currently working on increasing it to, for example, 2 to 300, which means an increase of 600 megawatts. I believe that with the proper and efficient organization of the entire process, and most importantly, when the chief dispatcher is not fighting this battle alone but has the unwavering support, say, of the Deputy Prime Minister and the entire Ukrainian government, including all its departments and officials, moves as a unified monolith to Brussels and actively negotiates and first resolves the issue at the highest political level. Because all these detailed and thorough calculations about Europeans being in trouble, we have a measured and well-calculated European life. There, Fiesta, that's how it works indeed. We definitely have a network code just like that. There, everything is proper and noble, like why bother? Here are the conditions, and so on and so on. We say, guys, our situation is indeed beyond the pale. Well, the throughput capacity of Ukraine's external interface, generally speaking, depends on various factors, including infrastructure, technological advancements, and geopolitical influences. These factors collectively determine the efficiency, static and dynamic stability of power plants on both sides of the borders, ensuring the overall efficiency and reliability of the systems. And when these 1700 megawatts were calculated, they were calculated under certain specific balance conditions, specifically more approximately, and under certain so-called trajectories of aggravation. This is a very specific term in the context of expansive stability. However, most of it unfortunately got wrecked in the process of completion. Here in western Ukraine, at the Dobrotvirska, Ladizhinska, Burshtinska thermal power plants, hydro, and smaller ones, our balance conditions have changed. And we need to talk, Europeans, about this winter. Until we have completed repairs and until these are back in operation, we have these temporary balance conditions. And here is our calculation. And we need this kind of interface. Operating on the edge of compliance but still meeting your minimum technical requirements is crucial. This ensures that no issues arise within their systems, which are located in areas adjacent to Ukraine. By adhering to these standards, we can prevent potential disruptions and maintain smooth operations in the neighboring regions. And this first task, it can be solved in the summer season. The second task, however, ultimately, in the end, undoubtedly, everything that can be repaired and everything that can be put into operation before the cold weather must be repaired. This includes all machinery, equipment, and infrastructure. The third task. There are many industrial sites, including large thermal power plants, TPPs, and other significant facilities, or some communal energy companies, or some prototypes, or at large thermal power plants, TPPs, where the units and facilities are often severely and extensively damaged. In other words, they are not subject to commissioning in the next year, but all the infrastructure has been preserved. The gas infrastructure is suitable, and the power output infrastructure is intact. Let's then proceed to change the core strategy. We need to implement a centralized and comprehensive large-scale program specifically designed for the purchase and acquisition of highly maneuverable and flexible gas generation systems. The state is systematically centralized in the global market. Donors are lining up. They say, guys, how can we help? Here's money, here's resources, let's get it done as soon as possible. Here is an insurance mechanism for you, because it can not only be bought, it can be rented. And then, after a year or 2 or 3, it can be returned. What exactly is needed for this? You absolutely need insurance at this very, very specific moment, when this equipment crosses the border of Ukraine. So, you need insurance for military and political risks. You need a financial mechanism. Even the Ukrainian banking system is bursting with money. It's bursting with money. The economy is dying. And the banking system is swelling with money. Within Ukraine, we can create these financial mechanisms with our own resources to bring in approximately several thousand megawatts here in the next 5 months and deliver what? The personnel of DTK's TPPs in total. Won't they install them? Or the large housing and communal energy companies there? I don't know, in Kharkiv, or in Odessa, or in Kyiv. Won't they install them? They will. Next point, creating an ecosystem. This is the fourth item. Ecosystems when private businesses build this generation within their industrial sites now. This is what we are talking about for the next 5 months. We are kind of an engineering company, and we are involved in dozens of such processes right now in Ukraine, just like hotcakes. There is no hope in the government. Businesses are saving themselves as best they can in any way. If the state helped, it would be easier in any way. If it helped like a state, it would be easier in any way. Yesterday, a friend of mine who is planning a trip to Berlin shared their excitement with me. They have been eagerly preparing for this journey, and for the recovery conference we have next week, he was consulting because, for example, Yuriy Romanenko asked him a question, saying, listen, what if we provide a mechanism to private businesses? And for instance, how much does a megawatt of gas power cost? I said, roughly $1 million. Roughly $1 million per megawatt. But what if we provide, for example, approximately 500,000 in coverage in the form of some financial mechanism or an interest-free loan for 3 years, for instance. How will this affect the market? Or so, I'm saying a multiplier of at least 5. At least 5. A multiplier of 5. Awesome solution. Let's do it. The next stage in the process of demand management is the next stage and effective demand management. That is, we have various types of consumers in the energy system, such as residential, commercial, and industrial users, who have the potential to reduce their energy consumption through various means. We can abandon some electrified sections of the railways, which are currently in use, and switch to diesel-powered trains. This switch will be more expensive in the long run. Tough times. Play around with the various capacities and capabilities of the gas transmission system operator, where you can switch to pumping with gas efficiently and effectively. Implement rapid motivational tariffs in order to effectively and efficiently ensure success in the system. In other words, essentially and roughly speaking, substantially increase the difference between the cost of peak electricity and nighttime electricity, for example. In other words, there is a set of measures that will significantly change, so to speak, the motivation and incentives of consumers. And in a good way, in a positive and beneficial manner, they will significantly affect the individual profiles, the detailed schedules, and the absolute values at the highest peak. All the points and considerations mentioned above are completely meaningless and without value if we do not take the necessary steps to actively protect and safeguard them. Having already lost around 9,000 megawatts valued at approximately over $20 billion, we have empirically concluded that we actually need air defense systems for protection. That some concrete structures or other measures do not save us. In fact, these objects, which need to be protected by layered air defense, with a mandatory third level for specific objects, the third level, indeed, in fact, in reality, there actually aren't really that many of them, just only approximately several dozen of them. Taking the detailed agenda into account, adjustments to the priorities can be made to ensure they align with outlined objectives. It's clear that it's kind of missing. It's definitely clear that it's missing because we were simply waiting for it. We waited for these 2 years. They brought us what they could, as much as they could. We could have bought more, of course. But we buried it in a pointless structure. But we are indeed repeating ourselves. That's why there is absolutely no point in restoring something large. It makes sense to develop decentralized generation. It can't be bombed. There's no point in bombing it. It's cheaper than a missile. There's no point in restoring something large if you can't protect it. The next day, it will be hit again. And all of this together in a very short time, 5 to 6 months, requires a completely different level of organization and workflow to accomplish. Meticulous planning is crucial, coordination among teams is essential, and implementing efficient processes is necessary. Ensuring deadlines are met and resources are optimized will help achieve success. And our existing industry management system, which includes its current staffing and organizational structure, is simply not capable of handling these tasks effectively. So we will somehow, in some way, go with the flow, and hopefully part of the business will be saved. Part of the population will be saved.
I saw the news today that you can bring these items from Turkey on ships. The Turks seem to be offering these items, which is quite interesting and beneficial.
Possible, but it's a local solution. It will be a reporting infrastructure, powered. As the network topology is different, you won't be able to penetrate deep into the territories.
But at the very least, the Danube ports could be supplied.
Sure. But the Danube ports are a whole different story. Let's just say it's my thing, you know. I'm personally interested, but it is indeed abnormal when strategic cargo passes through the Danube ports. The Ismail port had a consumption limit of approximately 750 kilowatts in the month of May.
This is funny.
It's ridiculous. You can't power a big crane, you can't unload anything. Well, forgive me, so to speak, my dear people from my small homeland, but I had to make some necessary, slightly additional adjustments to the issue, and not turn off the ports, but turn off the neighboring villages, because that's the right thing to do. Around Ismail, because it's just the right thing to do.
Tell me, could you please provide more details on this topic, specifically focusing on the integration of storage solutions with solar energy systems? I'm interested in understanding how the creation and implementation of storage units and their subsequent integration into existing systems could potentially lead to successful outcomes. What are the key factors that might?
Look, so what exactly is your fundamental defining methodology of operation? In winter season, when you have 7 times less insolation, January versus July. January is often cold and harsh, while July is warm and pleasant. Accordingly, to get through this challenging January, you need to create a robust and overbuilt system. It's quite an expensive pleasure to get through the winter with just the sun and a battery. It's quite an expensive pleasure.
But in the summer, let's say, when it's summer, when there's plenty of sun, it has already solved problems for many.
This is a solution to the problem, but in this equation, we still need a few more terms, so to speak, to...
Well, the gas station is maneuvering.
Yes, the system as a whole definitely worked more efficiently. Indeed, of course.
Well, I mean, the equation, the solution to this energy problem is gas stations. Expansion of the cross-section, what else? To elaborate on the solution and its implications for the future, we need to consider the broader impact.
Repair what can be repaired. Create a few simple and inexpensive financial mechanisms to engage the internal motivation of private businesses, so that this ecosystem can function, because you can't solve everything centrally.
Today on the broadcast, we decided and suggested this with our first guest, who was also focused on energy and economics, but he looked at it from the financial side. So, why not propose a scheme where people are invited to invest conditionally in an energy fund, and then they receive their small share of rent because it is a distributed energy system, such as solar panels and wind turbines? The money is spent on purchasing these stations, among other things, ensuring efficient and sustainable operation. And then each person can benefit from the energy produced, contributing to a greener and more sustainable planet.
Look, the solution is definitely a million. My point 4, which I talk about creating this very important ecosystem, it also implies the presence of these small niches, which are extremely important for the ecosystem. By creating a few simple mechanisms, we will be amazed by the level of self-organization of the people. We will be amazed by this level. Ukrainians are strong in the horizontal connections of such a society. Our vertical stories don't work well, but the horizontal ones do. We need to consider in the context of the ecosystem. There are a few simple solutions that will also provide an example with Sverdenko X5, in addition to this as well. I'm saying this based on my intuition and in my honest and sincere opinion, but I'm absolutely certain it's very close to reality.
So, I think you've reached the end. Is that it? What else? What else?
It's frustrating. It's frustrating because of the ongoing situation. It's frustrating to see the state of affairs. The time will come when we'll gather all these bastards together, every single one of them, and electrocute them for everything they've done to this country, for all the harm and damage they have caused.
You speak figuratively because if you speak literally, it's indeed very detrimental, bad for YouTube in a sense. Correct? I don't believe it. Yes, friends. Well, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Drop the QR code so they can subscribe to my Telegram channel. For those who haven't subscribed yet, you now have a great opportunity. Follow Viktor on this incredible and exciting journey on Facebook. I'll send the link right now so you can stay updated. I have attached a link to his article, Our Chance, which is currently available on the website and other platforms, and which is also available on his Facebook page. Here is the link to his Facebook page, where you can find more of his work and updates. I will also add it to the description of the broadcast now. I personally think that Viktor has clearly shown that there are absolutely no problems with technical solutions and no problems whatsoever with organizational solutions. There is simply a lack of will and in fact some dirty corruption and bribery schemes that indeed make possible the elaborate schemes of concrete on blood and everything else. Actually, indeed. And I truly hope that this very difficult and challenging situation in which the Ukrainian energy sector and the country as a whole currently find themselves will indeed compel immediate and necessary action in the manner that Viktor is currently suggesting. And it depends on each of you how widely this information will spread, how it will go through social networks. It's about the terms, do whatever you want with this broadcast, pick the best parts. The most important thing is to spread it, because the authorities shouldn't say they don't have a solution. Especially since we can see from the example of Sviridенko that, as you said, there are solutions. If you put in some effort with a bit of determination and persistence and patience, you can actually find them. And we need to hurry so that we can properly prepare for winter and Ukraine's energy sector remains stable, as Viktor mentioned, because without energy, the economy has no lifeblood. Energy is the lifeblood of the economic system, and frankly speaking, if we undermine its energy, everything will collapse. And the energy front today is crucial, no less crucial than the military front, because the military relies on it today, and the country in principle stands on it no less than on the military. The energy front is fundamentally significant in various respects, impacting the military and national stability in numerous ways.
You know, God speaks to us in the language of life situations and events in various ways and forms. Foolish people who often act without thinking and which often leads to making poor decisions, and disorganized socio-systems which lack structure and efficiency, learn about the world through pain and suffering. The world is arranged very justly, with consequences reflecting actions and decisions, ensuring that justice is served. After 3 decades of relentless effort and unwavering dedication, we have finally earned all of this incredible success. It's truly remarkable, isn't it?
100%.
But the good news is that this is rock bottom, the lowest point we can reach. We need to gather our strength, push off from this depth, and rise to the surface, emerging stronger and more resilient than before.
And sail, 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 sail. Yes, because it's about export. Say it again. Look, the bots are running. Why is there not a word about electricity export? I banned one bot there.
Actually, we don't have any exports. Absolutely. If anything, this is absolutely a Russian issue. We have a severely deficit energy system. We haven't had exports for a long time.
So stop spreading this misinformation, and here in front of you sits an incredibly highly experienced specialist who has been in the industry for absolutely over 20 years. And what Viktor shared today is grounds for dozens of criminal cases, swift personnel decisions, and the removal of everyone who is unprofessional, everyone who is tied to the Russians. Everyone who is involved in corruption schemes and continues to, as it were, kill the country simply because they, damn it, cannot move away from this state of greed, which in fact has brought the country to this bottom that Viktor just talked about. Thank you for watching this video. Have a good evening and a restful night. I sincerely hope you have enough light to feel minimal discomfort and enjoy your time. Take care and stay safe. And once again, please like, share the broadcast, and subscribe to Sposo on Patreon, everything that supports us. To develop such important and relevant topics and maintain a truly independent and unbiased information space that allows you to see life as it genuinely is and plan your life trajectory based on the accurate and reliable information you receive. Thanks to Viktor for his remarkable civic courage and for the significant and impactful work he does. His immense contributions are truly appreciated. And the whole audience is writing about this. Viktor, from all of our honey eaters, a big, huge respect to you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.